Good evening, everyone. Apologize for the delay. I'm Amanda Hiltz, and this is Heather Hansen. We are both undergrads here at U of O, and we are representatives of Oregon Think Tank. On behalf of University Housing, I welcome all of you to the Living Learning Center Performance Hall, and thank you for attending tonight's community conversation panel titled, Why You Gotta Dance Like That, Historic and Contemporary Dance Culture. The Community Conversation Series is a living learning initiative of University Housing, and the panel discussions are co-produced by the students and student staff of the Oregon Think Tank and Oregon Brain Trust, two undergraduate academic groups in the residence halls. Tonight's panel was conceived by the students of Oregon Think Tank, who meet weekly on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. in the Collier Lounge in Hamilton Complex.
5:30 this term.
Yes. And I would like to reiterate our standing invitation to students who are interested in contributing development of the Community Conversations series to join the group. We welcome you. We always welcome new ideas and would value your culture, thinking, and intellectual curiosity. I also wish to acknowledge our co-sponsors, the Robert D. Clark Honors College, the Oregon Humanities Center, and the Undergraduate Studies, who have collaborated with University Housing for the past 6 years to make this series possible. Finally, you should have found a comment card on your chair when you got here, and we would value your feedback for tonight's panel. So if you could please take a moment to complete the card, we would be very appreciative. Tonight's setup is we're going to have about an hour of the panelists speaking, and then about 15 minutes of open question and answer. And then Naomi and her partner, Tony, will do a performance, and then there will be an open dance, and we'll be here till 10. Out. And yes, one more thing. Next, on January 21st, there will be a backstage pass dress rehearsal with the Eugene Symphony, and they are going to meet with the Eugene Symphony conductor, Giancarlo Guerrero, over at the Holt Center, and if you're students, they'll be meeting up and taking the EMU bus system to get over there, so you guys can all make it over there. And here's Heather.
All right, at this time, I will introduce our esteemed panel. First to speak will be Shannon Mockli, our assistant professor, Department of Dance, University of Oregon. She's new here, so give her a very welcoming round of applause. All right. Shannon is from Salt Lake City, Utah, where she received her MFA and the L. Scott Marsh Mentorship Award from the University of Utah Department of Modern Dance in 2008. Shannon has taught modern dance technique, improvisation, composition, and video technology at the University of Utah and in the surrounding community. Shannon has also developed her skills as a professional videographer, editor, and teacher of dance media. In spring 2006, she directed the University of Utah's International Student Dance Film Competition. Next in line will be Hannah, who is a student here, and she is formally trained in Irish step dancing and will discuss the culture of traditional Irish music with a particular focus on the costumes and competitions of step dancing. She has competed regionally and nationally over the last decade, as well as taught classes for beginners and champions. She is a sophomore studying neurobiology as well as an RA on campus. So if you want to learn Irish jig, just all right. And last to speak is Naomi Todd, and she is a University of Oregon undergraduate instructor and ballet Fantastique, okay, Academy, sorry. Naomi Todd began her training at Brightwood Dance and the Lake Oswego Academy of Dance, and has attended the Jeffrey Ballett Summer Intensive in New York City. Naomi's recent training experience includes coaching at the University of Oregon Dance Department and with Ballet Fantastique, where she has performed a number of soloist roles, including the 2008 Harlequin at the Holt Center. Naomi trains in Vaganova pedagogy under the direction of Donna Marisa Bontrager. Naomi is also a student in the Robert D. Clark Honors College at the University of Oregon and competes throughout the Northwest as part of a semi-professional salsa performance ensemble. And here they are.
this working? Okay. So, initially, they asked me to talk about dance form, and something that I've specialized in that maybe thought you may not have seen is dance on camera. Along with technological innovation, dances tried to, as an art form, like other art forms, have made advances in trying to explore dance through technology, through a new sort of presentational medium. So even from its inception, I'm going to read, because if I start talking, I'll go for a long time. So even from its inception, and perhaps more in the early days than today, motion picture and dance shared something in common. They're both interested in motion. So some of the earliest motion pictures actually captured dancers, and one particular one is by the name of Loie Fuller. She's considered to be an early modern dance pioneer. Played with light and fabric and made these sort of spectacles for her day and age, blending these two technologies, light reflecting off of fabric and then being captured on motion picture. So since the early years, film has taken on its own direction, and dance as well. Dance has branched out. Western dance, in particular, has branched into various facets. Dance for the camera is still a burgeoning genre of dance that remains quite hidden from the mainstream. So when I say dance on camera, we may have images of MTV music video, maybe dance or films that have dance narratives. So what can you think of any for me? Simply Ballroom, Dirty Dancing, Stepping Out, Stepping Up. So what I'm talking about is something a little bit different. Dance, as we see it on the stage, usually occurs in real time and in real space. It because it exists in real time and real space, and it's limited to this to the proscenium stage. Suddenly, capturing dance on screen allows us to look at it quite differently, and for choreographers to see it very differently, and to play with time and space very differently. The dance on camera can take place at various sites. The beach, an elevator, or even the body itself can be a site for looking at dance or where the dance occurs. Time can be manipulated in new ways with the use of slow motion or dissolve fading between shots, wherein the time before bleeds into the time after. So we see time, experience time very differently. New metaphors. So in the field of dance on camera, new metaphors, just as in any art form, metaphor is a part of it. New metaphors come about because of this new exploration, this new use of time and space. And so the topic of the panel discussion is, remind me, what's the topic of today's panel? Why you gotta dance like that. I think it's perfect for what we're going to be watching, because some of you may look at it and wonder, is this dance? And I think it's a perfect question, particularly for me as a dance artist. I'm always sort of pushing the boundaries of what dance is. And definitely dance on film does that too. It blends both dance and film. So I just wanted to show one take one look at an early experiment in capturing the body on video or film, and another more contemporary one. So this is a very, very early study. And so to think as you're watching, if she were to be dancing on the proscenium stage directly in front of you, looking at her body in this way would be impossible. So it's only with the camera roving around that we can even see her body in this way. And it's very new. It was new to this time. And I think as much as we take video and film for granted, it may not seem new to us. But for a dancer who performs on stage, this is a new way of being seen. From underneath. I mean, looking at her in this way would be nearly impossible on the proscenium stage. And so if you can think, if you were seeing this at the time it was developed, how new of an experience it would be if typically you see something like this at a distance. I mean, now we can really cut her body apart, and her body is the site of the dance, not her body on the stage, but her body is it. And so then, taking a big leap forward, I just wanted to show a giant leap forward from these kind of earliest stages of looking at dance on screen to contemporary work that's been done today in more, within the past few years. So the next bit you're going to see is titled oh, that's okay. That's okay. Can you go back to the root menu? And so I think the difference, you know, between this and say MTV is, you know, well, one, it's not that MTV is not artistic. I mean, I'm inspired by it at points in time, but but that it's about, one, the artistry of it, and two, the dance is the dance, the body dancing develops the narrative. You know, and it remains very abstract. Loose narratives are open to interpretation, just as they are when you see a dance concert. So, but I really do want to be able to see even if we just see one more. Any questions? I mean, this is a kind of a topic that could cover an entire semester that I'm cramming into 10 minutes. But even if you see something new that makes you think, is that dance? This is why I prefer Max. Really? Yeah, they I kind of think media is so much of a part. There we go. This is a very, very current one.
Non, je ne me souviens plus du nom du bal perdu. Ce dont je me souviens, c'est de ces amoureux qui ne regardaient rien autour d'eux. Il y avait tant d'insouciance dans leurs gestes émus. Alors quelle importance le nom du bal perdu. Non, je ne me souviens plus du nom du bal perdu. Ce dont je me souviens, c'est qu'ils étaient heureux, les yeux au fond des yeux. Et c'était bien. Ils buvaient dans le même verre, toujours sans se quitter des yeux. Ils faisaient la même prière, d'être toujours heureux. Parmi les gravats, ils souriaient, dans ce petit bal qui s'appelait. Non, je ne me souviens plus du nom du bal perdu. Ce dont je me souviens, c'est de ces amoureux qui ne regardaient rien autour d'eux. Il y avait tant d'insouciance dans leurs gestes émus. Alors quelle importance le nom du bal perdu. Non, je ne me souviens plus du nom du bal perdu. Ce dont je me souviens, c'est qu'ils étaient heureux, les yeux au fond des yeux. C'était bien. C'était bien. Et puis quand l'accordéoniste s'est arrêté, ils sont partis. Le soir tombé dessus de la piste, sur les gravats et sur ma vie. Il était redevenu tout triste, ce petit bal qui s'appelait. Non, je ne me souviens plus du nom du bal perdu. Ce dont je me souviens, c'est de ces amoureux qui ne regardaient rien autour d'eux.
that's that, I guess. Do we want to show the other one, or should we just move on to the next? Yeah, maybe we should just move on to the next one. Do you think?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's pretty convenient that you spoke on film and dance, because Irish step dance, modern Irish step dance culture got its start on television, effectively. Kevin has photos, hopefully, that I brought with me. But I think that if any of you have been exposed to Irish step dance in your past, that's probably what you know best, which is Riverdance. Riverdance actually started on a European, like every year, European countries get together and do this Eurovision film contest. It's like this weird mix of American Idol. It's a reality TV show, basically. And every country puts in an act, a singer, a dance, whatever. And Riverdance was Ireland's 1994 submission. They did like a 7-minute long film piece, and it was like this ridiculous hit. And everyone in Europe was obsessed with it. And it grew to be a stage production in Dublin. The man who conceptualized it, the dancer, was named Michael Flatley, who in the Irish step dance culture is kind of a cheeseball. He's sort of a ham, but he is a fantastic Irish dancer. And the music was written by a composer named Bill Whelan. And Riverdance came to America in 1997, which is how I began my career in Irish step dance. I saw Riverdance when I was 7 years old, and it like blew my mind, and I begged my parents to sign me up for lessons. And for that reason, I kind of had an interesting perspective on Irish step dance, because I'm not Irish from any like heritage sense. My family's from Scotland. So it's interesting because traditionally, Irish step dance is a folk art. It's not this big showy like Hollywood, Las Vegas production that people are familiar with Riverdance. I don't know if you want to take to the next one. Irish step dance started in pre-Christian Ireland as a social thing. It's just like any other folk dance. And there are two really kind of schools of Irish step dance. There is Irish step dance, and then there's kind of like, it's called Céilí dancing, which is a social thing. People get together, still even today, Irish communities get together, and they dance. Those dances are much more similar to like square dancing, kind of. The dance that I'll be focusing on is competitive modern Irish step dance. So I'm going to start with giving you guys a little bit of history on the dance, and then I'll talk about competitions. So this picture that you see here is a page from what's called the Book of Kells. It's a really elaborate piece of artwork, basically, an illustrated manuscript done by monks in ancient Ireland. And that is the root for all Irish designs that you see. So when Irish step dance started, it was done socially in family homes. It wasn't a competitive thing. And especially in the last century, it has evolved into a competitive sport, which is really bizarre. There's this weird subculture of competitions, and it's really like people are really intense about it and really competitive. So if you want to take to the next slide, that's a picture of my school of Irish dance. We're actually in the St. Patrick's Day parade in my home in Denver, Colorado. But you'll see that we're all wearing the same costume. Every school of Irish dance, and there are several in each state in America and several, of course, in Europe, has their own kind of school emblems, school colors. And if you look, the Celtic knots on the dresses are actually snakes. So all of those designs originate from that Book of Kells. And when you start out dancing, when you start competing, you wear these costumes. And not only are they a way to they're beautiful. They're a part of the art to see the costumes move. The skirts are weighted so they don't float up. They're stiffened, like kind of flat boards. But they're also a way to communicate to whoever is watching you dance, kind of where you're from, who taught you to dance, what style it is. And even just geographically, styles of dance vary greatly. And as you progress through the levels, most girls and boys start pretty young because it's a cultural thing. People who are of Irish descent, it's a way to stay in contact with that cultural heritage that they lost when they moved to a different place. So a lot of parents start their children dancing really young, like 5 years, 4 years old. I started when I was 9, which is really late in the relative scale of Irish step dance. But as you progress through competitions, you kind of graduate levels. There's a kind of a tier scale of how you graduate. And you dance in front of judges. As a beginner, you dance in front of 1 judge. And as you graduate through championship level, you compete in front of 3, sometimes 5, and sometimes 7 judges. And I won't go into how it's scored because it's really boring. But so if you want to go to the next page, that's the woman on the right is Lynn Wick. She was my dance master. And so Irish dancing in Ireland for hundreds of years was taught by these roving dance masters who just kind of went from town to town and taught the steps. And that's kind of how it evolved. And now it's become, it's a business for my dance teacher as any other, school of ballet or whatever. But so you can see the girl in the center, she's probably 8 or 9. So there's like a really wide range of ages of people who do this. Adults compete, and people who dance tend to continue through the rest of their lives. When you reach championship level, your costumes become a lot more expressive, and you can see these costumes here are a lot more modern than those blue dresses with the Celtic snakes knots. Most girls design their own dresses, and they're ridiculously expensive. They cost anywhere from about $900 to $4,000. So there's this weird, in competition, it's kind of similar to figure skating. There's this edge that you have with dresses and how elaborate it is, and there's this weird one-upmanship. So the most interesting thing to me is that this folk art has become like a competitive culture, because for so many families, like when I started dancing, I had no idea that you would compete in it. I assumed that it just was dance class. And so there's this kind of interesting duality between staying in contact with your cultural heritage and also doing it as a competitive thing. If you want to go to the next one. And now, so I picked this picture because it kind of shows the evolution of the costumes. They change every year, and I've seen some really ridiculous ones with feathers and faux fur and like really gaudy Las Vegas-looking dance costumes. But the steps have remained relatively traditional, which kind of clashes with the modern costumes. The other thing that I'm guessing people are confused about is the hair, the curled hair. They're actually wigs in that picture. Most people who compete on a regular basis wear wigs because it's so much easier than actually curling your hair. But culturally, the hair is curled. It's actually a competition requirement that women have their hair curled when they compete. And that started because this social dancing, the Ceilidh dancing in Ireland, a long time before this culture began, was done on Sundays after church. And the women would be in their Sunday best, and they would have had their hair curled. And it kind of became ingrained in the dancing, these really, elaborate, $3,000 dresses and curled hair. Men used to dance in kilts and shirts, and recently, like within the last 20 years, they've begun to just wear kind of like dress pants and usually an embroidered cummerbund with designs similar to the ones that you see on the dresses. That is a picture. Those are actually 2 of my friends several years ago. They started dancing when they were 3 or 4. Their family's very, very Irish. And so this is, for them, an important thing. And the thing that I've loved kind of being adopted into this culture it's so omnipresent in these people's lives. I've danced at friends' weddings, and it's, when someone in the community dies, oftentimes that person will have requested that people come to their funeral in the dance costumes, the dresses. And so it's just really interesting to kind of watch these families adopt this folk art into their life as the art that it is. I don't know. That's a really awful photo. The color did not turn out well on the projector, of the same girls now. And that's at the national competition in 2007. So competitions, there are 7 competitive regions in North America. And you start out dancing locally with one judge, and as you graduate to different levels of championship, you begin to compete regionally in one of your 7 regions, and then you can qualify to compete nationally or at Worlds, which are almost always held in Ireland or Scotland. Actually, there was kind of a scandal this last year because for the first time in the history of competitive Irish step dance, they're going to hold Worlds in Philadelphia, which is just like unheard of to the Irish dance communities. And I think that that's really interesting that this Irish folk art has moved its center into America this year. That's an interesting fact. So there are several organizations in America and in the world that help organize these competitions. And there are really elaborate sets of rules from how the costumes can be set. Your skirt should be between 4 and 8 inches above the knee, which lets the judge see how your legs and knees are placed, but it's still to be modest. So key features in Irish step dance, there's so many weird rules, like your arms remain motionless unless you're doing like a dance with someone else. And even then, they're really rigid and choppy. And I've heard several really bizarre explanations for why that is, and they all seem like they're not true. And they're all really different. My guess as to why Irish step dance does not use its arms is that when the Catholic Church became such a presence in Ireland a couple centuries ago, it probably was considered immoral to move so freely, and it's a lot harder to dance intimately with someone if your arms are glued to your sides. But your toes are always pointed, and your knees are always crossed. So it's really bizarre to watch, and I think that most people are familiar with Riverdance, which is a lot more modern form of what you see in competition. And so that's a group of girls. Oireachtas is the word you see above it. It's a Gaelic word. It's actually what Ireland calls its parliament also. It means like champions or leaders, kind of. Oireachtas is the term for championship competition. That's at regionals, which was actually held in Portland in 2006, which is where that photo was taken. But those girls are 8 years old, which is the youngest age you can dance at competitively at a championship level. So a lot of girls who've started when they're 3 or 4, and boys as well, though there are considerably fewer boys that compete, start so young, and they speed through their competition classes, and they actually have to wait before they can compete at Worlds or Nationals because of the age limitations placed on by the people who organize the competitions. And the last couple photos that I put up actually are just photos of new dresses. And in this competition, the competitive world, it's really strange. Like, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've seen movies like Best in Show, like really bizarre, competitive, freakish behaviors. It's so much like that. The major competitions, normally a class of, like the biggest age groups are girls like 14, 15, and 16. And those competitions normally have 200 or 250 people in them. So it's just kind of this weird big convention of people with crazy curled hair in these bizarre costumes, and they kind of evolve. Every year there's one girl in like a ridiculous dress. And then the next competition, everyone has that new style, but there's someone else who's kind of pushed it further. So it's kind of an ever-evolving dance culture. And the dance itself remains relatively traditional. So it's just an interesting juxtaposition of maintaining traditionality and evolving dance. That's really all I got. Maybe. I actually think I might teach a Kaylee dance, which are really, really fun. So if you guys stick around, they're awesome. I'm pretty out of practice. I haven't competed since I came to Oregon, so it's iffy. But.
Okay, well, I'm kind of more the stand-up kind of a person, so I'm gonna kind of go through a whole bunch of Latin dances. I have a lot more training in ballet, but it's not as interesting and not as fun and not as culturally interesting as Latin dance is. I have a little bit of training in salsa, a couple years, and through that experience I've gotten to get to know a whole bunch of different kinds of Latin dance. All of Latin America is rich in every kind of culture there is, and especially in music and dance. And you can click a couple times, there's some words. So the ones I'm going to go over, there's thousands more, I'm sure, and thousands more different variations of each kind. But I'm going to kind of do it by region, which of course isn't a full region list of all the regions in Latin America, but we have the Caribbean, which is a huge focal point for Latin dance, and especially the kinds of Latin dance that you see around the world are definitely coming out of the Caribbean as its main source, besides Argentine Tango, which is another big one. But the Caribbean, you get dances. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bachata, Reggaeton, Merengue, ChaCha, which was actually originally Cha-Cha-Cha, and now it's kind of both, and Salsa, all coming out of the Caribbean. In Mexico, which a side note is it's not actually originating in Mexico, but it's very popular in Mexico, Cumbia, and then also Quebradita, which is a fairly new form of dance, but it's really cool. And then Argentina, where you get the tango, and also in Uruguay. So here's my map I did. It's really cool. So what we have here is we have a big circle around Cuba, because that's where all the music kind of comes out of, and it kind of just like permeates throughout the whole world of Latin dance. And Cuba is where, like, oh, there we go. I got this. Okay, so yeah, that, like I said, that's where salsa originates, and Cuba is really where you get the Afro influx of the African music, and then sort of the rest of the world takes it and adds their instruments to it. So then you have reggaeton, which actually comes out of Panama, but it was made famous in Puerto Rico, which you can kind of see. I just want to kind of visualize it because I like to visualize things. And then you get Quebradita in Mexico, Cumbia. This is a big, big dance. It's a super low-class dance. And almost every form of dance at one point was the low-class dance. Argentine Tango, of course, started out as the low-class dance, and then it became famous in Paris, and then the Argentines were like, okay, well, maybe this is a cool dance. I guess we'll do it. But it started out as low-class. So all forms of dance, Cumbia still is. So you get Cumbia, it came out of Colombia. You get it in Bolivia, Peru, Argentina, Chile, also really big in Mexico, and you get it in El Salvador. I'm sure you get it all over. But they each kind of have their own country's version of it, and it's all sort of danced by the low-class population. And it's danced at weddings and festivals and parties. Let's go to the next one. So I'm going to start out with Bachata. It's a really famous Caribbean dance. It started with it's a guitar dance. The music is based on guitar, and then it turned into a electric guitar. So that's the main sound that you hear in it, and it's a 4/4 dance. Let's get just a little bit of the bachata if we can. So this is real classic with the guitar here, and it's a very, very sensual dance, and that's kind of the main thing about bachata. If you that's sort of the main basic step of bachata, and you get the 1, 2, 3, and then the pop. And that's kind of the basic bachata. It doesn't, in its pure form, doesn't have too many turns or really dips. So this is kind of a more obviously popularized thing of bachata. That's fine. I don't want to take up too much time. So bachata, sensual. Dominican Republic is its main sort of center of where it is. Merengue is the other Dominican Republic dance, and that's actually, I think it's the official Dominican Republic official dance. And it's a really cool dance. It has a little more history. Merengue, it comes out of the slave tradition, as do a lot of these dances coming out of the Caribbean. And it's a very, very basic dance where you basically just do this in, more forms. Here, I'll come up here. You just kind of march in place, and that's merengue. But there's some interesting stories about this, that merengue started out as a sort of war leader. One of the leaders of one of the banana republics actually sort of hurt his leg in one of the wars, and so he couldn't really dance correctly, so he was kind of wobbling like this as he was dancing. And so then the rest of the population, kind of either out of pity or out of just not knowing what was going on, just said, okay, this is the dance. Another thing you hear is that the slaves would be chained by their legs, chained together, so they couldn't really do much other than kind of this. It could kind of also be sort of a resemblance of the kind of just marching into, the things that you had to do, slavery and things like that. But yeah, sure, might as well. This is just some merengue music. It's not really dance. This is one of the most famous, really famous merengue music. And it has a lot of trumpet, and it has a really, really fast beating rhythm, and it's just easiest dance to dance in the whole world. But really, really fun. So this is you get the how do you call those things? Things with the little sand, yeah. But very Caribbean. It sounds kind of like bachata, but bachata is a lot smoother and it has a lot more guitar. That's about good with that, I think. So yeah, Grupo Mania is that one. And then we're going to go into reggaeton, which doesn't really have a specific dance. It's more of, I just wanted to mention it because it's a really big thing as far as music goes. It started in the 90s, and it actually started in Panama, which I didn't really know because it was made famous in Puerto Rico. And it's kind of a Puerto Rican thing. They mixed reggae with sort of modern hip-hop. And it's really important that it's kind of a different thing completely. But reggaeton is what you hear in the Gasolina song is reggaeton. And it has a very specific beat to it. It's called the dembow rhythm, which is actually the name of a song where the first reggaeton was made popular. And it's kind of the boom, boom. And I can't really do it, but it's specific. And if you listen to more than 2 reggaeton songs, you're that has the exact same background music. The exact same, you just pick it up and put it in and just add the lyrics. And it's just the exact same thing. So if someone's playing a reggaeton song, a CD of reggaeton in a seat in the next room to you, all you hear is just the same thing over and over again for 3 hours. And you're just this is really horrible. But it has kind of a mix of Spanish rap and sort of just lyrics and singing in Spanish. So I don't know that we necessarily need... Just want to get to the dembow rhythm when it gets in, because it gets kind of... It's going to take a while, I think. This is Ivy Queen. She's a famous reggaeton queen, I guess. And another big one is that I had up there was Don Omar. There's a lot of different reggaeton artists, but these are... Here's the dembow. It's really, you can tell, it's very much... very iconic for this type of music. So that's good for that. The next one we have is ChaCha. And ChaCha is interesting because it's not... Well, it is a Latin dance, and it actually came out of Cuba. But what happened was this guy named Pierre Zucher Margoli, who I'm guessing is French, but he was living in London at the time, and he was... in London, and he was like, you know what, I want to go to Cuba and find out what they're dancing over there, which is a good idea, because there's a lot of cool kinds of dance in Cuba. And this was, I don't remember what time period this was, but what he did was he found that they were splitting the 4 count. And so it was, and nowadays with cha-cha, they do it in a lot of different places in the music. So sometimes it's 1 and 2, 3, 4. But anyways, it's 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, 3. Or I don't. It's hard to do. But anyways, the cha-cha-cha is where they split the beat. So it's and a 1, or it's and a 2, or it's and a 3, and a 4, depending on what kind of cha-cha you're doing. So anyways, he took that and he's like, took it back to London, and he created a ballroom dance about that. So cha-cha is kind of really just straight on started as ballroom. They didn't really necessarily take it and turn it into their thing. So cha-cha, I feel like people have seen it, so I want to, for the sake of time, just kind of skip through the video of that one. Cha-cha is pretty common. That one's from, I think, Dancing with the Stars or some sort of offshoot thereof, the picture I had up there. Here's a couple kinds of dance that may not have been so popular or seen so much. The first one is Cumbia, and I talked about Cumbia already with a map. Really interesting, and it comes from, the dance is danced to banda music, which is a kind of music that actually in Mexico it's danced, I know mostly Mexico, Cumbia, which it's all very different, but it's danced to banda music, which is basically, it sounds like polka, like German Oktoberfest polka with, Spanish lyrics. And it's interesting because the Germans actually did come through there, and they were creating a railroad line. That's when that's when the accordion and the trumpets and the trombones got introduced into Mexican music. So let's get a little example of Cumbia just to hear how the music sounds. It's definitely very boom, 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 and the Cumbia dance is similar to salsa, and you can see people dancing in it if you go to a salsa club or a salsa social place. So this is a little more modern cumbia song, but you can still hear the bass tubas and it's a lot like salsa. There's turn patterns. It's just a little more jumpy, sort of hoppy. So that's good for cumbia, I think. It can be danced. You can dance salsa to cumbia music sometimes, or vice versa. The other one, this is really great. Quebradita is one of my favorites. It actually started in the 1990s, so it's a very, very new form of dance. Started in the southwestern United States with Mexican immigrants, created this kind of dance. And it's basically kind of danced to the same kind of music, banda music, but it's 100% different. It's cheerleading with one girl and one guy, and it's absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like it. So let's take a look at this. Oh, bother. Yeah. And so it's not really danced in the US anymore because, let's go for this one. Because I guess it was just a quick fad, but it is danced in Mexico. And this is at a Mexican thing. It's very, very traditional to have the sort of like chaps. And that's kind of a basic Quebradita step where they do this like, it looks like you're riding a bull or something, which is really cool. And here we go with the one-man cheerleading. It's just crazy. This is my favorite Quebradita couple that I've seen on YouTube. A lot of times the girls are wearing the chaps as well. But yeah, that's a good Quebradita example. You didn't really get too much banda music. That was kind of an intro, but I think the next thing I have is, okay, we have tango. So there's a couple types of tango. Tango started as an dance for the poor class in Argentina. It's danced a lot in Uruguay as well. It's it's a social thing. In the pure form of Argentine tango, it isn't choreographed. It's kind of just done, and you just find a partner and you just follow. And it's a really great way of learning sort of following and leading techniques and sort of understanding how to sort of feel when someone's trying to move you somewhere, guide you somewhere. And it's used in other types of dances as a way to practice that feeling. So the Argentine tango is different from ballroom tango in that in its pure form as well, it doesn't have, this is, I think that's the ballroom, my example of ballroom, because it's a lot more showy and it's a lot more sort of trying to be sexy. Yeah, there we go. And it has more sort of lifts and things like that. It's definitely a showy kind of thing. And they've changed the music a lot for ballroom tango. But as a rule, all types of Latin dance are just kind of a showy version of that Latin dance. But this is one of, I guess, I would say one of the biggest differences between the normal form and the ballroom form. You can hear that, you can hear the accordion, which is the base of tango music and traditional, like, old school tango music. We can go to the other clip of, yeah. Of Argentine tango. The Argentine tango music, we don't have to do it, it doesn't matter. So I think the last thing I have is salsa. And so salsa comes from Cuba. It is a mix of African congas. It comes from it comes from Cuba Son, which is another form of dance, and that's kind of like the parent, and it's kind of still alive, so the parent is there, and salsa's sort of changed a lot from that. But salsa is definitely a Puerto Rican, and some say the newer form of salsa is kind of a New Yorican sort of a thing, because a lot of what salsa came out of New York when the Puerto Ricans brought it up from Puerto Rico and Cuba. Brought it up to New York and popularized it, and that's kind of where we get our salsa that we have today. It talks about the struggles and joys of life. A lot of different kinds of music have certain themes. Merengue, for example, is a themed party, just kind of like, yeah, life's good, and bachata is usually like heartbreak, and salsa is kind of like everyday life, different things. So here we have some basic instruments of salsa, the maracas, which someone helpfully told me how to say. Claves is really important. That's to hear the, it's kind of just two pieces of wood, but it sounds cool. Trumpets, really important. We have the congas, which are the base of salsa. You can do salsa with just congas. That's a pure form of salsa if you like, because that's what provides the rhythm. And bongos also help, but they're not the base of the rhythm. And then the bass, of course. So there's some instruments. And this is just kind of when salsa was coming out in America. They have I think this is an ad in a magazine or something about salsa, and it talks about salsa coming out in this new form of great dance, and it's kind of pointed towards like the people dancing foxtrot and what else does it say up there? At the time, yeah, Charleston. So it's the new dance, guys. It's like it says in the end. In other words, salsa's hot. So I thought that was an interesting little. That's what it says in the bottom there. I just retyped it so you could kind of read it. But that's kind of salsa getting its name in New York there. So here you have some more information about different types of. Here in Eugene, there's a lot of places to go salsa dancing, just for fun and socially. There's some websites up there if you want to take classes. And talk to me afterwards if you're interested in any kind of sort of salsa events in the evenings or classes, because I can let you know about different things.
All right, does anyone have questions? Nobody? All right.
Yes, I have a question for Hannah. How many wonderful, awesome awards did you pick up during your 10-year spree as a championship dancer?
That's a really hard question to answer. Lots, like more than I can count, but they actually, God, that sounds so egotistical. They score you every competition as a beginner on each dance, and there are actually several Irish step dances that you can compete in. The 4 core dances are reel and slip jig, which are done in soft shoes, which I'm actually wearing because I thought this table was not going to have a big drape on it. But they're like kind of like ballet shoes without the big wooden or fiberglass block. They're leather, and soft shoe dance is supposed to be really like gentle. It's actually considered to be like the feminine form. And they're actually hard shoes, which are probably what you guys know. They have like a fiberglass tip. They could be used as a weapon. So you place in all of those dances as well as other ones. And then as a champion, you pick 2 dances, 1 soft shoe and 1 hard shoe, and compete in those. And then if you are, it's called being recalled. They list the names of the top third of the competition. You're chosen to come back and do a solo dance in front of the 5 judges. And that's your overall score. So championship-wise, I placed pretty high on a regular basis in local competitions. And well in regional competitions. I never placed like anything worth mentioning nationally, really nothing impressive, like 20th, which is not the best you could do. So yeah, kind of all over the place.
Any other questions?
Yes, for a professor. What was your influence, your major modern influence, i.e. Alvin Ailey, Martha Graham, any of the, like, you have a major modern influence?
It's a hard question to answer because since those early modern dancers, we've gone into postmodernism where the dancers after those pioneers questioned everything that they did throughout spectacle, throughout technique, really question or force the question, what is dance, who is a dancer, and where can it happen? So I'm actually after the sort of postmodern era with a bunch of, influenced by so many forms, ballet, jazz being 2 others. And then dance, too, has taken on kind of a worldview, like other art forms, and has assimilated a bunch of different dance forms, capoeira being one, African dance being others. So modern dance today is used very loosely, and a really... I think those of us that call ourselves modern dancers, we kind of engage in a real eclectic form of dance. So I would say, yes, definitely, I owe my gratitude to Martha Graham, Alvin Ailey, all of those early greats. But at the same time, I'm not wedded to any one influence or form. So thanks.
Any other questions?
When we were all walking in, they were showing a clip of the music video with the treadmills.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you wanted to comment on that clip at all, and how you would categorize that style, if you think it's even dance, or just a little commentary.
Nothing's off limits in my mind. Anything can be drawn from. And I guess, the more I study dance, the more my idea of dance is so broad, to the point that John Cage, standing on stage and not ever dancing is dance. So I would say I love that video. I actually wanted to use it in another class that I taught at the University of Utah. As an example, I taught a class where the students had to make their own dance for camera. And I wanted to use that as an example. I categorize it as dance. I categorize it as fun play, but a great piece, you know? So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this question was for Naomi. We heard when Hannah started. When did you start all your great dancing?
I started ballet when I was young, I don't know, 7-ish, 8-ish, 9-ish, and I did ballet. I was actually taught in my early childhood by a circus dancer, because I lived in a very small town, and she decided she was going to start a ballet school. It wasn't ballet, it was a dance school. But she had, ballet classes, jazz classes, hip-hop classes, but she was a circus dancer. And so that's where I got my horrible ballet training, which was not, had to be unlearned, but that was okay. But, it's cool. I got to work with a circus dancer. And that's where I started dance. I started with like tap and jazz, like a little kid does, and I really got into ballet when I was about in 8th grade, and then I started salsa my freshman year of college, which was 2 years ago. So, and I've done modern at U of O, and I've done some other kinds, tap and jazz and hip hop here and there, but that's my main focus.
This is for Naomi. What do you plan on doing after college?
Well, ballet is often done during the daytime, and salsa is often a nighttime thing. So my favorite thing would be to find a little place with lots of mirrors in it, and get some little kids to come in during the day and some older kids to come in during the evening, and play some music. That would be my favorite thing to do after college, but I'll probably end up teaching languages or something boring like that.
Any other questions?
So this kind of goes for any one of the panelists. When I was taking a lot of dance classes, it wasn't so much a focus of like dancing to an audience, but dancing for yourself. But for kind of dance to actually have a place, it has to be dance for an audience. Do you guys find it at all difficult to find an audience for your dance? Speaking as a modern dancer.
Yeah. Last to get paid. And you're lucky. I mean, particularly in modern dance, yes, it's fun. It's hard finding audiences. We are competing. I mean, dance is competing with so many other forms of entertainment there, and then particularly dance as art is it's very challenging selling tickets. So this is my experience, but and it's hard. It's hard to inside of Western tradition, there are those who dance and those who don't dance, and dancing requires a certain talent, as how we see it, and the proscenium stage does that, but hopefully, I mean, broadening the scope of what dance is also just allows for us to play with a new kind of openness, and think of dance. It's I think it's partially up to dance artists to start to think about how to bring dance to the public rather than expecting it to come to us all the time. So it's a new challenge. But I don't know.
Irish dancers are popular in March. You have a ridiculously good audience for like the 2 weeks surrounding St. Patrick's Day. But I mean, there's kind of always an outlet, maybe not so much for an audience who sits and watches you, but for an audience who participates in the dancing. I've been to so many just like family get-togethers where there's dancing performed or done or talked about. So like, there's kind of a twofold audience in Irish step dance, the cultural heritage aspect of it and the raucous partygoers in March.
I had a unique experience. I went to China at the end of the summer, and there you don't need anybody. You do dance, all times of the day in any place you can find that you can set down a battery-operated boombox, and you get people to come and watch you. And it's just the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I went to just a sort of normal park, middle of a work day, and there is just people on all sides of you. As soon as you leave the boombox area of one group of people who's doing like Chinese fan dancing, you get into another boombox area of someone who's doing swing dancing, and there's just groups of people, like 10 to 20 people, just doing dancing in every single corner of this park. And I was just blown away, and I just kind of sat there and I just listened for a while, and then I just got up and started doing some ballet just for fun, like why not? And eventually, since I wasn't Chinese, like 30 people circled around me and got me to start doing Chinese street dancing, which I'd never even heard of. But, it was just like, it was the most unique experience. And I think it's places like that where you just get blown away by the fact that anyone's willing to do anything or watch anything. It's just amazing to me. So I like what you were saying about bringing it to the public. Just throw it in their face. Just do it. Tony and I like to do that as often as possible. Into the supermarket and start doing some salsa and see who watches us.
Questions? Did you have a question? No. Okay. So lesson time?
Or performance.
And just to put in a plug, the Department of Dance at the U of O has their faculty concert. I have a piece in it. February 14th, 15th, and 16th. So bring your dates. My piece is kind of Valentine's appropriate, so yeah. Bring your dates.
Nice. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. We really enjoyed everything. It was amazing.